But wait, do you call a grinder a sandwich?
No. Yes. Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, that's an entire thing to debate onto itself.
I started singing hoagies and grinders in my head, just like automatically.
I know. I almost translated. I was like, wait, that's sub for some of you.
Yeah. No, a sub is a sandwich. Yeah, I agree. I said no first, but I misspoke. Like I wouldn't say play fast and loose with the definition of a sandwich, but once you get into burger territory, you're really going to start pissing me off.
Right.
You know?
So wait, is a meatball grinder a sandwich? Because that's hot meat.
Yeah, it's a sandwich. Yeah.
But
it's
then
not
why
a burger.
Is a burger not a sandwich?
Because a hamburger is its own. Now, somebody might have taken some delightful ground chuck and fried it nicely with some salt and olive oil and thrown it between two slices of pumpernickel and called it a sandwich.
Ooh, pumpernickel.
But then somebody in Hamburg was like, and then now we take the bread and the cow meat, and then we take a bite, and it just come from Hamburg, so it's a hamburger. And also we love the scorpions. So,
Wait, is that your German accent?
I couldn't get it right, so I kept going.
Bordering on Herzog. Werner Herzog exploring this dilemma of what is a sandwich.
God. A sandwich.
What is a sandwich?
Sandwich.
For ages, historians have pondered this question.
Well, and could he even hold it? Because remember in that Tom Cruise movie where he plays the bat guy, he ate his own fingers to survive in prison.
What?
Yeah.
Oh Christ, I missed that movie.
Yeah, and Jack Reacher, he's the villain, and yes,
what
but did he eat a finger sandwich?
I think it was a finger hamburger.
Was it a knuckle sandwich?
Welcome to Spoiler Peace Theater, the podcast that doesn't give a shit about spoilers. We just want to talk about the movies. My name is Evan Crean. I am co-chair of the Boston Online Film Critics Association and co-author of your 80s Movie Guide to Better Living.
My name is Megan Kearns. I'm a contributor to Edge Media Network, and I too am a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association.
My name is Dave Riedel. I write sometimes for Salt Lake City Weekly, and I'm a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association also.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah, you are.
Yes, I am.
So, on this week's show, we've got more than a few movies to talk about. So, we're going to be talking about the horror film Spiral. We're going to be talking about the documentary Mr. Soul. That's with an exclamation point. We are going to be talking about Cuties, everyone's favorite Netflix film that's been inspiring a lot of conversation, to say the least.
Yeah.
We are going to be talking about the documentary The Way I See It. And finally, we're going to close with The Nest.
The Nest.
But first, Spiral. I saw this one, so I'm going to be talking about it. And so this is a horror film. It is about a gay couple. Their names are Aaron and Malik, and they move to a small town with Aaron's daughter. Things get pretty fucking creepy from there.
Oh.
Basically the situation is that Malik sees something fishy going on right away, and Aaron does not believe him, and everyone else around him starts gaslighting him. There's just basically just the neighbors are acting really creepy, and all kinds of weird stuff is happening to their house. Like people are like breaking into the house and spray painting, hateful graffiti and taking things out of the house. And Malik can see that something's wrong right away, but Aaron doesn't really believe him, and everyone else is gaslighting him. So this movie I thought was really good, and I feel like it works on a couple of levels. Like it works on a race and a sexual orientation level. Like it's clearly about people who are afraid of LGBTQ folks, but it's also about racism too. It's like a brutal combination of both. And it's just so frustrating watching Malik kind of go on this quest to figure out what the hell is going on in this small town, and just seeing him not get the support he needs from his partner, and just Yeah. So I thought this was really good. Just trying to think some things to dig into. So there's just all kinds of creepy stuff going on. Like there's this creepy guy who lives across the way. He's like an older guy who keeps showing up on their property. There is a couple in the neighborhood that invite them over and kind of pretend to be friendly to them. Like, oh yeah, we don't care if you're gay. Like, that's great. Other people are assholes if they discriminate against you.
Yeah.
Do they say it's like,
right?
we don't care
that was
if you're
my
gay?
question too.
Yeah, they say things like that.
I was gonna say if somebody says that, they absolutely care if you're queer.
I
Just
know.
Right.
saying.
Yeah.
It's like when people say, I don't take things personally. Oh, they totally do.
Absolutely, they do.
Oh, I don't take things personally. Yeah, you do,
Yeah.
asshole. Okay.
Yeah, this couple's played by Lachlan Monroe and Chandra West, and they basically, you find out that they're kind of the leaders of the kind of weird cult kind of thing. They do like black magic and that kind of stuff, and they
Ooh.
yeah, they have this kind of like cult of people in the town. And so the movie takes place in 1995, and what happens is Malik finds out that 10 years before there was a lesbian couple that lived in the town, and they died in a murder suicide.
Suspicious.
And
Oh.
so he's like, oh, that's fucking fishy. So he like finds their abandoned house and finds some tapes and starts seeing that they were going through the same stuff that he's been going through, like the same neighborhood events, and all these things are happening. And he's like, oh shit. So Malik gets onto this, and we find out that this is just insane. And I wish there was a little bit more in the mythology of this, but this is a thing that every 10 years, this group of people in this town have someone that moves into town, and they use fear of that group of people. So in 1985 and 1995, it's fear of LGBTQ folks that they use to kind of turn people against them. They take those people and it's usually it's the young girl for whatever reason, and the couple, they feed the girl to their son, I guess. This is where the mythology is kind of confusing. So basically through this dark magic, they're able to stay young, all of them, like forever. And so they seem to keep doing this for every 10 years or so. Like Malik finds out, he starts figuring it out, and they mess with his medication. So he's kind of like, reality, the lines between what's real and what's not is blurring together for him. He has these horrible flashbacks to when he was a young man, like when he was a teenager and he was with his boyfriend and they were making out in the car. And then these people come and like beat the crap out of his boyfriend. And so like that's haunting him, that trauma of that. And so it's kind of like coming up again because he's in this town, and his partner doesn't believe him about things going on. It's just, there's a lot of great drama, and it's just super creepy. I wish there was a little bit more on the mythology side of things, but it's just really effective. And for me, it like really came to a great head when Malik ends up getting, he and Aaron separate because somebody like plants photos of Malik, cheating on Aaron.
Staged photos or real
good question.
photos?
The film isn't clear. Like it looks like possibly if he was like drugged or something, because he starts losing chunks of time. So you're like, I'm not sure if it happened during that window, but basically Aaron immediately throws him out. And so he's like trapped between a rock and a hard place, and he like goes to a hotel, and that's when he figures out they've been fucking with his medication. And so then he goes back because he's put together by now what's happening, how they're setting Aaron up and his daughter up to be, sacrificed or whatever. And so he goes back and finds there's like a birthday party going on, and he shoots Lachlan Monroe's character in front of everyone.
Oh.
And then, so they throw him in jail, but that doesn't kill Lachlan Monroe. The Marshall is his character's name. And so, Marshall and Malik are sitting there in the jail cell. Like he comes and sees him, and he basically explains to Malik, we do this every 10 years, and it doesn't matter if it's you. I mean, like right now people are afraid of you because of who you are, but we literally just we've been doing this for centuries. We just point to whoever is the one that you should be scared of right now. And that's it. We pin it on you, and we take you. Like, so you're shit out of luck. And so then what happens is after we see that Aaron figures out what's going on too late. His daughter is killed by these people.
Yikes.
Oh,
Yeah. And we cut to 10 years later. It's now 2005. And there's a Sikh family that's moving into town.
oh no.
And you can tell that they're going to be moving into Aaron and Malik's house. And they are going to be the target because now it's post 9/11. We're going to be pointing to them as the people. And the daughter finds a CD in the apartment that Aaron made with all this, or sorry, that Malik made with all of this information about what was happening in the town before he, was taken and killed. And so this girl finds the CD with all the info, and we're hoping at the end that she's able to get away with her family because they know what's going on.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's intense.
So, yeah, it's really good. I think it's a good movie. There's stuff here. There's some great themes, and I thought it was really good.
Excellent.
I was a fan.
You spoiler pieced me in wanting to see it.
I know. I did want to see it, but I couldn't. But I also really want to see it because Jeffrey Bowyer Chapman, who plays Malik, is a great actor. I loved him on the TV show Unreal.
Yes.
He was so good. So I am very excited to see him in a lead role in a film. So
He is
Oh,
very
good.
good in this. I think a lot of why this works so well is because as Malik, he is such a sympathetic character, but he's not. You feel so frustrated with
Mhm.
him and for him this entire time that he sees what's going on because, he's a black gay man. He knows he knows what's going on. Like he's seen this kind of stuff before. And that's so frustrating that Aaron is so dismissive of it. And even he has phone conversations with this guy named Liam, who I have to assume is the boyfriend in the beginning, who even Liam is kind of like, dude, will you just get over what happened to us? Like, it's not going to happen again. You're fine. And that is just so
Mhm.
frustrating.
Wow.
yeah,
Hmm.
I'm
So-
very excited to see this, especially because it's a queer horror. It's bringing in homophobia and racism. So yeah, sounds great.
Yes, I think you're going to dig this. I was definitely a fan. And it just, I don't know, it just does a good job of like creating that slipping reality feeling for Malik on so many levels between like the gaslighting and the just like losing time and all of it. I think that was done particularly well.
So it's better than that Kevin Bacon movie where he gets trapped in that
God,
house, is what
movie.
you're
Let's
saying.
never talk about
'Cause-
that movie
Yes.
again.
I never saw that, but that one sounded bad.
Yeah. Okay. It was bad.
Anyway, I'm sure there's something I forgot, but the movie is good. So let's move on.
Yeah. All right. Cool. I want to see it.
Yeah, I think you guys will both dig it. And Megan, I think
Yay.
especially, I'm looking forward to
Mhm,
hearing
I'll
what
tell
you think. So we're going to talk about Mr. Soul next.
I can talk about 40 minutes of Mr. Soul. Had a little interruption and wasn't able to get back to it, so I'll let you guys take it. But I liked what I saw.
Yes, a little filmus interruptus.
It
That's
happens.
true.
What are you going to do? So, Mr. Soul is a documentary directed by Melissa Hayslip, whose uncle, Ellis Hayslip, was the host and in charge of a variety show from 1968 to 1973 that ran on public television that was filmed out of New York City. And it was a
Mhm.
Black variety show, and it featured exclusively Black artists like poets and musicians and singers and activists and actors and dancers. And that's what it was, artists were interviewed, activists were interviewed, and the art was featured. I absolutely loved this documentary. I think it is beautiful. I think it's incredibly uplifting and inspiring and just joyous to see such artistry and to have a show that was just for Black people. Like of course, I'm sure plenty of other people watched it. Like later on in the documentary, they received letters. The show received letters, and there was, I don't know why this made me laugh so much, but there was somebody who was like, I'm not Black, but I love this show. And so clearly other people were watching.
I think they said with an exclamation point in their letter, I'm not Black, was like the opening line of the letter.
But like, it's just so absurd. But so clearly this was a show that other people, who were not Black were watched, but it wasn't for them. I mean, it was solely for the Black community. And I think that that's incredible, especially at a time when there were not a lot of Black people, hardly at all, on TV. and starring in films and,
Right.
whatnot. Yeah. This was just great. And I absolutely loved it.
Me too. It's a fantastic documentary and just something really fascinating that I had never heard of or never known about.
Yeah.
And so it was really great learning all about it and seeing how it was a product of civil rights activism and a need for representation. Sounds like it burned very brightly for the few years that it ran. And it was super sad to hear in the documentary about how the Nixon administration was basically trying to take away Black voices in public television because there were a few different Black shows that were, speaking to Black culture. And it's just so frustrating seeing that and then knowing that Ellis Hazlett, the showrunner, he did not feel like it was worth to really fight super hard to keep the show on the air, and that was a bummer to hear that he didn't want to get kind of entangled in some of the, what was he calling the politics of the street?
I think so, yeah, something like that, which is interesting, and that kind of harkens back to what he says earlier in a segment of the show where he talks about how there's lots of different ways to protest and lots of different ways to get your voice heard. And he kind of lists them all. And clearly, fighting in such an overt way was not his way. But it is still sad because it's sad that such an important show, was gone. And I'd never heard of this show until this documentary came out. And, what I love about this is this show was so much from people who worked on the show, artists who were on the show, academics, everyone talking about the show in the documentary talked about how entwined it was with, Black liberation and Black power, but also Black self-love and just seeing different forms of art that is exclusively made by and made for Black people is incredibly powerful. And also that, where else would you see spoken word on TV? Where else would you see, avant-garde dance? It's just incredible and just amazing. And the artists that they had, Stevie Wonder, Gladys Knight, Patti LaBelle, Maya Angelou, James Baldwin,
Al Green.
Just incredible, the lineup that they had.
Yeah.
Oh, I remember. This is one part I do remember. Either Ashford or Simpson says, there would be no Ashford and Simpson if there were no soul, because that's where they got their break.
They aired so many new talents that had never performed before or had never performed on TV before.
Right. Yeah. And they did the performances live. This wasn't like other TV shows at the time where, they were lip syncing or, and that's what I think what made this so special is that, these were true live performances. I love how much the documentary delves into Ellis Hazlett and how he is so entwined in the show, but also what a fascinating person he was as a gay Black man hosting this show. And I loved the conversation they showed with Louis Farrakhan, where Ellis, challenges Farrakhan on his position on LGBTQ people and kind of seeing the way that he puts him on the spot. And I just thought that was really brave of him to do.
Yeah. And the fact that here is a gay Black man who is running a show and is putting this all out there, that made it even more special and just more exciting. And you're absolutely right that he, the way he challenged Farrakhan and his homophobic views. And the other thing too that I love and that I was really struck by, speaking of him as an interviewer, is that people talking heads were talking about how, when there's a variety show or a talk show, the interviewer is the star of the show and they very much are a performer. And that's not what Ellis Hazlett did. He was not a performer. He was not trying to, take the limelight. He really wanted to have the focus on the artists. And so he would ask these really great questions and he would really listen. And that's so rare to hear on a televised interview. And that's really, really great and special to see.
Yeah.
And also the fact that he championed so many women artists and had a mostly female production crew. That's amazing. That's so right. Fantastic.
I thought that was really incredible. Yeah, that he was such a feminist and supporter of women artists and crew. I thought that was one of the most interesting things to learn about in this documentary.
Yeah, and kind of coupled with that, the fact that he had Catherine Cleaver on the show to talk about her activism and, wanting to make sure that Betty Shabazz was okay after Malcolm X was assassinated. Like, that's just, that to me is real community. And also how he, was very much a part of his own biological family, but he also created, community, which is very common for queer people, that we need to create our own families and our own communities. But I love that even though he still was very much a part of his own family, he was creating another family as well, community. And I think that's so beautiful. And it's just, he was such an inspiring person, and the show was so inspiring, and that's just amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a great documentary. I learned a lot. It was engaging. I really liked the effects where we would hear Ellis's words and see them kind of coming on screen in a way that felt very poetic and very alive. It felt like the documentary had a similar energy to the show.
That's a great point. This was incredibly well edited, well paced. Yeah, I was riveted. It's a really powerful piece.
Agreed.
The other thing I want to say, because after I watched this documentary, I was like, I want to watch every single episode of Soul. I mean, like, I'm a white woman, the show is not for me, but I don't care. Like, I want to watch all these artists. I want to see all of these important conversations happening. And, even though it's not for people who are not Black, like, I still think that we as, white people especially should be watching shows like this. We should be hearing these conversations. We should be hearing, these artists and watching them. So I think that is important. But I found that you can watch season 1 online for free at shoutfactorytv.com. And you also can watch some additional episodes throughout the series at 13.org.
Cool.
I know. I'm so excited.
That's awesome. I'll have to check those out now.
Yeah, they sound great.
All right. Do you have any other closing thoughts on Mr. Soul?
No, just that this is a really important, powerful, uplifting film, and everybody should see it.
Agreed. Okay. So I think we should get to Cuties.
I'll be ducking and covering over here.
So maybe to give a little bit of background, that this has been a controversial film for film critics to discuss, because there are many who, I think initially the problem was that people saw a trailer for this on Netflix that maybe wasn't quite portraying the movie in the way that an accurate representation. And so people kind of got really offended and was like trying to claim this movie was made by and for pedophiles. It's just ridiculous. But anyway, there's been a lot of conversation.
Wait, I want to say it started with the poster actually for Netflix. Yeah. So
the poster.
So Netflix's poster is a very sexualized shot from the film, and it is a shot from the film, but taken out of context, it looks like it's over sexualizing young girls, and it's a very different poster than the original French film's poster. So that was the original kind of catalyst for everything. And, Netflix immediately apologized and they retracted the poster, but it was already kind of too late. And the director, Maimouna Decore, was already getting death threats. Like by the time the shit hit the fan and the film was getting, pummeled by the right-wing conservative side.
Yeah. I mean, I've also seen people on Twitter coming out and saying like, oh, I'm not right wing, but fuck this movie. And I think a good portion of them haven't even seen it. But I think there's some people who have seen it too, who are saying like, oh, this movie is gross. It's for pedophiles. And I can't believe that we're putting this crap out. There's just a lot of vitriol surrounding this movie. And I'm here to say that I've seen it. And I don't understand why people are so outraged by this movie, because I don't think, well, first of all, we've said on the show before, depiction does not equal endorsement, but also there's plenty of other reality television show that covers similar subjects where young girls are being sexualized.
Oh my God,
Dance
that show's
Moms.
gross.
And I don't understand like why people are okay with Dance Moms and Honey Boo Boo and shows like that, and now they're mad about this movie. It's ridiculous.
Absolutely. I could not agree more. The thing about depiction is not endorsement is absolutely correct. There is a really fine line, and you can, make the argument whether or not a film actually succeeds. And, sometimes the intention of the filmmaker is to critique something, but they don't arguably do it well enough and it ends up looking like glorification or comes off very exploitative. I have also seen this film, and the film, first of all, if you take scenes out of context, which, very possibly is what some people did, with the trailer.
Yes, it's certainly what they did.
Exactly. Of course, if you take it out of context, the movie looks horrible. But if you watch it from start to finish in its context, you will, I think, undoubtedly see it is very much a condemnation of the over-sexualization of girls. Not of the film, but by society and by media in general, and girls feeling pressure themselves in order to be performative in a very sexually explicit way in order to gain approval by society. This is an incredibly uncomfortable film. Like, I could not stop squirming. I felt squeamish while I was watching it. Like, it is a tough watch. It really is.
And it's shot to make you feel uncomfortable too.
Yes. And the thing of it is I think what very clearly shows Decore's brilliancy as far as indicating that this is not an endorsement, this is a condemnation and a criticism of over-sexualization, is because when the girls, the main girl Amy and the other girls who are dancing, when they have these sexualized poses, they are looking at the camera. It is when they are filming each other. It is when they're taking selfies. It is all performative. So it's when they're performing literally on stage in a dance. So it's very clear what is happening, that it's done very intentionally to condemn this.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you started to touch on the plot, but this is about Amy. She's 11 and she joins a group at her school, the Cuties. They're kind of a dance squad, but they're also kind of they're rabble rousers. They cause some trouble and get into some hijinks. And she comes from a Senegalese family, and they are religious. And so part of this film is about her rebelling against her religious background, but also culturally. I mean, there's a really great thread that I'm sure is being lost in discussion because people are focusing on the wrong things about how her father has taken a new wife in Senegal and is going to be moving in with them with his new wife, and how uncomfortable that is for both her mother and her, and how angry it makes her that she has another woman coming into the home and that her father's taking another wife, and like, how dare he? And I feel like that's a great storyline that I'm sure is getting lost in all this other discussion.
Why bother talking about that and other important issues?
Right. Yeah. And so for me, like, I don't know, I feel like most of this movie is typical 11, 12, 13-year-old hijinks where, like, you're pushing boundaries, you're doing stuff, like, she steals money from her mom to buy, underwear, and there's so many situations where she knows what she's doing is, she's pretty sure what she's doing is wrong, but she has to find those boundaries and she has to test those boundaries to get there. And I feel like that's most of what's happening in this film, is her running up against those boundaries, because at the end of the film, at the end of the day, she realizes it's wrong, and she comes to a kind of middle ground where she's still respectful of where she's come from, but also realizing that she's got more of a modern streak in her. So where she lands in the end is kind of like somewhere in between, where she's walks out and is hanging out and jumping rope with people, but also kind of she's changed into a more kind of modest outfit. I don't know.
Yeah, it is. There's a lot of really interesting things about the intersection of gender and religion and of, clothing and expression. Because in the very beginning of the film, because they're Muslim, they are wearing, they're covering their heads, they're wearing hijab. And her little brother has a scarf on his head, and their mother's like, take that off, that's for girls. And he's like, I don't care, I want to wear it. And, which is very cute. And he clearly doesn't care about gender norms. Like, he just wants to wear what he wants to wear.
Right.
Then there's a scene where where Amy and her mother are praying, and there are other women around, and they're talking about how terrible it is for women that when they, they're the evil when they don't dress modestly, and you need to dress modestly. And that's, very much cut to Amy watching one of the girls who becomes her friend, who you do not see her face. You just see long hair shaking around. You see a scantily clad body, gyrating to music. When I first saw this person, I was like, oh, this is a woman who's like, 20, because you're only seeing her from the back. And then she turns and flips her hair back. And I'm like, oh my God, she's like 10. And it's like, it's horrifying, but it's intentionally done. And that's the thing, is that everything is very meticulous and very carefully done to show, the problems and sexism and objectification and exploitation of girls in our society and in other societies. And I think that is great.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and we see that Amy steals a phone from her, I think, uncle or cousin.
Yes.
And so she gets into all kinds of, stuff on the phone where she's watching racy videos and she's posting photos of her and her friends dancing. And then ultimately it's a lewd photo that she posts that kind of everything comes kind of crashing down because of that. Yeah, the film is not in any way endorsing this. And it is very clearly saying that this is not right. But what it's also saying is there's a line here, and the line is not always clear. We need to better define this line. We need to have these tough conversations, because we've, as a world, as a culture, we've, made young women feel a pressure to do these kinds of things and set the expectation. Like, there's a scene where they run into a laser tag place and they're goofing around in there. They get caught by the manager and the security guard, who are going to call their parents. And then they explain, oh, we're on a dance squad. And then they start dancing. And then the gross, creepy guy who's in charge is just like ogling them. And you're just like, gross, dude. That's fucking 11, disgusting.
Dude. Like, it's it's like fucking gross.
Yeah.
And the funny thing about that is, right before that, they say, take your hands off me. What are you, a pedophile? We're just kids. And like, so the guy clearly knows how old they are, which just is like, I mean, and it's obvious when you look at them, but it's just even grosser. But that's continuously reified throughout the film, is like they're hit on by, guys who are older than them, and they lie about their ages, and, because they want to be seen as older, because that's what's cool, and you want to be desired, because then you get attention. And there's also a really interesting tension between rebelling and violence, which I think is really also fascinating. And one of the most disturbing scenes, and there are a few in this movie, but one of the most disturbing scenes is when Amy is wearing like she's wearing a skimpy outfit, and a guy, and one of the kids in her class, a guy, like, I think slaps her ass, and she like turns on him, and then he starts like slut shaming her, and then she stabs his hand with a pen, and I'm like, holy
with the pencil. Yeah.
Yes!
Straight through his hand. It's brutal.
That scene is amazing and ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah. And then also when they get to their big dance at the end in the dance competition, and they're doing all these moves, and you see how poorly they're being received by the crowd.
Well, but that's interesting.
The judges is not as clear.
Yeah. I was going to say, it's actually...
The judges seem to be like, yeah, okay.
Right. That's what I mean. The judges seem to be like, oh, okay. And then the men in the audience are like, oh, yeah. But the women are the ones who are like booing and who are shielding.
Yeah, covering their daughter's eyes and stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's so fascinating to see, because they're like essentially like, humping the ground and like, putting their fingers in their mouths and like these really like seductive poses that is so gross because they're kids. It's but this is what they're watching, and this is what they think they should be emulating. And it's just,
Yep. I mean, it's frustrating that this movie is being so blown out of proportion, because it really, there's stuff to talk about here, and it's not all on the sexualization of young women. There's religion, there's culture, there's other things to talk about in this film. So I find it frustrating that the conversation has been shifted or co-opted by this group with bad intentions.
I mean, I agree, but I love that there's a conversation happening about, sexism and exploitation of girls. But let's actually talk about that. Let's actually have that conversation.
Right. Let's have a good faith conversation about it.
That would be wonderful. Like, to actually have a conversation about, those actual messages, the mixed messages, in media, and why, why do girls feel they need to do this? Why do women feel they need to do this? So often it's due to a patriarchal fucking sexist society, that puts double standards on women and tells women what to do with their bodies. And, you have to look this way. You have to be appealing, for a hetero relationship, but then you also are punished for your body, and so I would love that conversation. Yeah. Let's dig into that conversation. But this movie is not the problem.
No, definitely not.
So let's say before we move on though, I want to know, Evan, did you like this movie?
I don't even feel like is a good word to describe what I'm glad I watched it because I want to be part of the conversation. I want to understand and I want to have a point of view. And I think the film is effective in doing the things that it sets out to do. But I hesitate to say because I don't have a desire to see this movie again. I think it's important conversation to have. So I'm glad to be part of it and have seen it and have felt uncomfortable, which is just what you're supposed to fucking feel when you watch this movie. Because gross. Yep. And not gross just because we're seeing it, but gross because this is, young women have to go through this.
I think Mona Decore does an incredible job in making everyone feel uncomfortable, which I think is that's the reason she made the film, was she wanted to critique this. And I did like the film, but I agree with you. I never want to watch it again, but I think it's a really well-made film. I think it's an incredibly thought-provoking film, and I'm really glad I saw it.
Awesome. I'm glad we're in agreement on that. We already were in agreement. I wasn't expecting you to answer differently, but I think it was good to ask that pointed question.
Yeah, because maybe you would have appreciated it, but really hated it. You never know.
Yeah. So then let's talk about The Way I See It, which is a documentary that you and Dave saw.
Yeah. Pete Souza, photographer of presidents. Two.
That is correct. Ronald Reagan and Barack Obama.
Yeah. I mean, this is a pretty straightforward, rah-rah documentary championing the calling out of, how would you describe it? Extreme assholery and unfitness and all the bad things that you can accuse correctly Trump of doing. And what Pete Souza has done is he was the official photographer, like Megan said, for Reagan. And then he was an official photographer for Obama. Ever since Trump became president, he opened up an Instagram account and has been kind of answering Trump's tweets and pictures with photos of Obama doing something completely the opposite in an appropriate manner. And he put out 2 books, one of just photos. I don't remember what it's called. And then another one called Shade, which is all of his responses to Trump's posts. And he's gotten a lot of traction because of that. So this movie is just about, a lot of it is, I was kind of surprised to see how much of it was about his career, but it is also about, the modern political landscape. Did I get that right, Megan? Okay.
So
what do you think?
I loved this. I am a huge fan of Dawn Porter, who directed this. Her documentary Trapped, which is on abortion trap laws, is an outstanding documentary and everybody should see it. So I was already excited to see this. And then when I watched it, I had an incredibly emotional reaction to it, more so than I even anticipated. I literally sobbed the entire way through, from the opening frame till the end of the closing credits. Like, I just could not stop crying. Seeing all the photos of Obama and his family and their history is just, it's just amazing. And not that Obama was a perfect president, because no one is a perfect leader. No one is a perfect person. But seeing a leader who actually led, seeing a leader who listened to people around him, he surrounded himself with people who disagreed with him. He wanted dissent. He knew that was the best way to find the best solutions, or what he thought would be the best solutions. And whether you disagree with him or agree, the fact that he truly wanted to find the best solutions, the fact that he knew he didn't know everything is just so humbling, and to me are just such important qualities in a leader. It just made me so homesick homesick's not quite the right word, nostalgic for that time when I didn't think everything was a hellscape, apocalyptic dumpster fire. So seeing this was just amazing. Yep. And what I also thought was great is seeing Pete Souza's kind of transformation, because he did not agree with anything Reagan believed policy-wise, but he thought that, Reagan at least held himself in, comportment like a way a president should. But he didn't share his political views when he, worked under the Obama administration. He didn't share his political views. But once Trump came into office, that's when he started, and he's just kind of picked up steam. And he said that working in the Obama administration made him more vocal and made him more political, which I think is really incredible. Seeing the power of still photography, like he's asked about videos and how, video is obviously what's hot. What's hot right now? Oh my God, that sounds ridiculous. But it's like, that's what everyone gravitates to.
All the cool kids are doing the
All
video.
the cool kids. Yeah, but like that's what people gravitate to. That's what, a lot of, magazines and not magazines, but like online sites, they gravitate towards video. And he still talked about the power of still photography and that it's freezing a moment in time. And I think he's right. And just seeing the power of that artistry and seeing it through his eyes. And he essentially not exclusively, but almost exclusively narrates this documentary, taken from speeches that he gave in public speaking engagements. And it is about his career, but it's not. It's also about, photography and about art and about chronicling history. And what does that mean? And I just thought this was great. I think the editing is great. The score is great. Yeah. It's a very slick production. And I think that works for this story being told.
Yeah, he makes some really pointed observations about how whoever the White House photographers are now are bad at their jobs, basically. Either because they are bad at their jobs or because they're not being given the freedom to do their jobs. Either way, and he compares the Situation Room photo, the Obama raid, good Lord, the Bin Laden raid photo, the really famous one where Obama is more or less sitting in a folding, it's like a chair he pulled up, and Sousa explains that normally Obama would sit at the head of the table, but he had, military sit at the head of the table. He's like, I'll just pull up a chair next to you. And so that's what he did. And then he's like, I know this room inside and out. I've been in it 1,000 times. And he shows a photo of Trump in the same room. And he's like, and Trump and whoever is with him, I can't remember who it is, they're all looking in a particular direction. And he says, that's where the TV screens are in the room that you're watching. He's like, so the photographer is standing in front of those screens. So it's either posed or the photographer doesn't know what he or she is doing, or he's like, I just don't know. Like, what does this photo even mean? I mean, I'm putting words in his mouth, but that's what I took away from it. And I really was one of the big messages I took away from it. Of course, Megan, you touched on this too. Is just the historic, the documenting of history, and how right now, with all of this crazy fucking shit going on, we don't know what's going on inside the White House. I mean, you got a bunch of leakers like fucking crazy, but or in the president's case, giving 18 interviews to Bob Woodward. On a visual level, you don't know what's going on. You just see the president in front of Marine One, or you see him in a rally and doing this weird fucking thing with his hands. Like, I don't know why he's always looks like he's holding an invisible football. I don't get that. But all right, it's not really critique of Trump time. It's about. But I would
argue actually it is, because this documentary very much critiques Trump. And and I mean, as much as it is about Pete Sousa's career, as much as it is about Obama, it's very much about about critiquing Trump too. And I think the other thing that's interesting is about talking about that is Pete Sousa saying that it's very clear that the press photographer they don't have access the way he had access. And I think that's also, and he says history will suffer for it. And I also think it's interesting because when he was hired to work in the Obama administration, he said, the only way I will do this job again is if I have complete unfettered access. I need access to everything. And he was told, Obama gets it. You don't have to worry about that. And I think that that's so important. And I also love that he talked about, he's like, I'm not a photographer for the president. Like, I'm not here to do press. I'm not here to make the president look good. I'm here to document history. And that's very different. But it's also very clear, as you see in video and in the photography, it's very clear that he had a very congenial relationship, a very amicable relationship with Obama, and he also seemed to have a very congenial relationship with the Reagans too, because after Ronald Reagan died, Nancy Reagan called him and wanted him to be the photographer there. So which is just really, really fascinating. Like,
Yeah.
I think his whole career is fascinating. I also think it's fascinating that press photography or photography for the president and for the White House started with LBJ. Like, I think that's really interesting. And yeah, I think there's so many little nuggets and that are just really fascinating and riveting. But I also think just seeing the photography, just the volume of photography is just really incredible.
Yeah. And I think a lot of you could probably pick any photo to show the sharp contrast in one person who has a soul. Whatever you think of him as president, one person who has a soul, Barack Obama, and another one who does not have a soul. And by the way, I'm an atheist and I'm using the word soul. So, and I always think of the photo, there's 3 photos I think of with Obama, and they all involve little kids.
Yes.
One is the Spider-Man photo, where the little boy dressed as Spider-Man is shooting Obama with a web, and Obama's reacting like, "Ooh, you got me." The other one is when he's holding up one of his staffers. He's lying on the floor of the Oval Office, and one of his staffers has brought their baby to work, and he's holding the baby over his head like, "Oh, you're such a cute baby." And of course, the last one is the little boy touching his hair.
It's the best photo ever.
And it's just like, imagine Trump doing any of those things. And first of all, imagine that you could convince Trump to do any of those things. Second, imagine a child would want to do one of those things. Third, imagine the child screaming bloody murder during the photo shoot. You know? I mean, I
think that's why I'm so, and I know I'm not alone in this, but I think that's why I'm so nostalgic and so heartsick over Obama no longer being in the White House, because that photo encapsulates who he is as a person. The fact that he, communicated with kids and treated them like people and was respectful, but had this like playful air to him. And the fact that he understood this little boy doesn't think Obama, the president, is really like him and doesn't really have hair like him until he touches it, until he really sees and feels that that's real. And that's so incredibly powerful for Black children. I mean, it's just amazing.
There's another photo I think of, and it's also coincidentally got children, but it's Sasha and Malia, and I can't remember which. It's when they're out. You know this one, Megan, I'm sure. They're outside about to have a snowball fight, and you see one of the girls. She's got a snowball, and she's about 2 feet from Obama's face. And in the next photo, he's just covered in snow, and she's clearly gotten him. And he thinks it's the funniest thing that's ever happened. Imagine Barron Trump throwing a snowball in his father's face. I mean, oh my God. First of all, I don't think Barron Trump probably knows what a snowball is, but I'm not going to, he's a kid. I shouldn't rip on him. I just, what I came away with, other than, first draft of history, et cetera, is just the complete and utter lack of humanity in this current administration, and how they're not people. They just, they're wretched. They're wretched. There. They're wretched. That's a good word. We'll put it there. That's how I'll end my portion of this documentary.
Yeah, I think this is incredibly emotional, but I also think it's a really powerful plea for freedom of the press and really what a leader should be, and what we want our history to say about us as humans, as people, and what we value.
Yeah. I'm on board with you there. So, yeah. So on that depressing note, do you have anything else to say, Megan?
No.
Okay. Evan, let's talk about, you're the host this week, but is it a horror movie? Like, is The Nest a horror movie? Because it sounds like one.
It's not.
Oh, it's not? Oh.
It sounds like it would be, and even seems like it would be from the opening of the film. 'Tis not.
Oh, man. That's my favorite kind of horror movie, though. The kind that makes you think it is, but then it's actually not. But then, maybe it is. But it's not.
The AV Club, their review had that this is a ghost story or a haunted house story without ghosts. And I think it's a very apt description.
That does sound interesting to me. Please enlighten me.
Yeah, this film stars Jude Law and Carrie Coon, and there are a couple. In the 80s, they moved from their house in the US to a country home in England, and shit just happens.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's the high level summary, is that some weird stuff happens. Their marriage experiences some rocky moments. Their kids experience some strife. It's this house. Yeah, I think haunted without ghosts is a good description of the house. It's an old house. It's a very large old house. And so there's a lot of history there and echoes of it. And yeah, there were a few times where I thought this was going to turn into a horror movie, and then it did not. What else am I leaving out, Megan? That's important.
Oh my God, you're leaving out a lot. So this is set in the 1980s. Jude Law plays Rory, who's a commodities broker. And basically he's kind of like a scam artist. Like he's constantly trying to... Yeah, he's basically trying to always get the next big, score. And he pretends he's really loaded when he's just blowing through money.
Mm-hmm.
And they constantly have to restart their lives. Carrie Coon is a horse trainer. And they have...
Oh my God.
I know. That's why you should watch this, Dave.
Echoes
That's
of
why
my
you should
life.
watch this.
Yeah.
But and they have 2 kids. They have a daughter and a son. And so the film starts off like they have a very idyllic life, or seemingly idyllic life, but you can kind of see that things are probably not as they seem, just in the way that it's shot, that there's a lot of obscuring in the frames, and as if you kind of can't see everything that's happening.
Eerie music.
Very eerie music. Yeah. So then when they moved to England, they moved to Surrey, kind of in this, a state like Evan said, and everything was kind of a little off. Like Rory had told Allison, who was played by Carrie Coon, that his old boss had reached out to him for his old job. And he's like, I just had to do it. It was too good of an opportunity.
Yeah.
But at the party that's welcoming him back, he says a very different story. And you find out that his boss got a call from Rory that he reached out to him and not the other way around.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So that's when Carrie Coon, Allison, knows that what the fuck, something's wrong. And she also hides money from him. Like she stashes cash in like a spot in the ceiling. And
like a jewelry box.
And he'll like ask her for money and she's like, no, but then she will give him some. And yeah, so there's actually a lot happening here, but it's all very emotional. It's not a lot plot wise, but it's a lot on an emotional level. So if you're looking for a really great character study, if you're looking for really vicious arguments, which I freaking love a vicious fight, there are
some good arguments here.
Oh my God. So Carrie Coon is a fucking goddess and I love her and she's the best. And
she's fantastic in this movie.
She is fantastic in everything. And you are 100% correct, Evan, that she is amazing in this. This is like, I just wanted more of her because she's so goddamn good. So there's a scene where the 2 of them are fighting and they're getting really nasty. And she's saying, you're poor and you pretend to be, rich and you always have been. And he's like, well, when I found you, you were with your daughter in this, shitty apartment. And, now you're blowing all my money. And she's like, yeah, we're stuck in this shitty house now. She's like, why does it matter? Who are you trying to impress? We don't have friends here. We don't have family here, although he does. And he's like, it matters. I had a shitty childhood. I deserve this. And if you're too stupid to understand that. And when he says that to her, there's a moment where their faces are so close in profile and she lunges just a few inches. And that is such a fucking badass move because she's like basically like, get back the fuck up, asshole. And the fact that she does that, I just love that. And she has little mannerisms and gestures that are just fascinating to watch because she's just incredible.
She does that a few times in the film. There's a scene where they go to look in an apartment that they couldn't possibly afford in addition to the house that they're renting. And they go out to a fancy dinner and she just orders everything. She's like, fuck you, you're buying me a nice dinner. And just orders like everything super expensive. She gets the bottle of wine, and while the waiter is pouring some for her to taste, she just takes the bottle and takes a big swig out of it.
But even before that, that's a great part. But what I love even more is when she's ordering everything and she's going down the line. She's like, we'll have this, we'll have this, we'll have this. And the waiter turns and she's like, don't look at him. I've told you what we wanted. Thank you. It's like, she's like so calm and collected, but just acerbic and vicious. And I love it.
And I love the scene late in the film where she's there with him and he's trying to make a deal and she just fucking torpedoes him. Like he's talking about
Yes.
the theater and going to see Anthony Hopkins in the theater, and she's like, "You've never been to the fucking theater a day in your life. You probably read that in the paper." Like right in front of the client. It's amazing.
I love this so much because I think Jude Law is great too. I think he's really, really good in this. But this to me is really Carrie Coon's film. Like she is just luminous. She is just riveting and captivating. And I just wanted to follow her character everywhere. Yeah, she's amazing. And I also really liked the cinematography too. And I like how the cinematography consistently especially like when they're looking at that apartment that they cannot afford, and she's calling him out on the fact that she knows they can't afford it because she's been to the bank and seen what the money they don't have. I love how it's highlighting how small they look in each scene, like almost like the apartment's going to swallow them, and it kind of shows this chasm between them, like, and it just kind of highlights their fractured relationship and how the cracks are just getting bigger and bigger between them. And yeah, so the cinematography really reinforces that, and I love that.
Yeah. I gotta talk about.
You're gonna talk about it?
Yeah, her horse that she has dies, and we see the horse, get sick and fall over, and it gets put down, and then we have to see them bury the horse. And I just feel like this movie is needlessly brutal in that regard, and I don't know why we had to sink so much of the movie on the horse dying, the horse getting buried, and then later on it's starting to come out of the ground. I don't know for what reason. And she's just digging in the ground and clutching at the dead horse. I don't know. It's dark. And I felt entirely like too much time wasted on that particular detail. I don't get it.
Evan, do you know a lot of horse people?
They spend an appropriate amount of emotional energy on the fact that her horse has died and she's had to put her horse down.
Yeah.
I just think that they spend too much time on the physical acts surrounding the horse.
Yeah.
Like,
to defend Evan, it's pretty brutal. Like you see the dead horse's body on like a
flailing and like a what do they call it? A bucket loader when it's getting thrown into the ground. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not just the fact that the horse dies. It's not the fact that she's expending all of this, like grieving and trauma about it, because no, that totally makes sense. But yeah, I agree with Evan that it was just, it felt needlessly like disturbing. The one thing I will say though, is that the horse kind of inadvertently also highlights how disgusting and despicable of a person Jude Law's character is, because she's talking about how devastated she is that her horse died, and her kids are super supportive. They're lovely. And Jude Law doesn't come home one night, and he comes home like the next day, and she's telling him about how her horse died. And he flips out, not because she's grieving, but because he's like, oh my God, I can't believe I was sold a shitty horse that failed.
And she's like, horse. That's what he calls it.
And she's like, he's not a car. He was a living, breathing creature. And like, he's just disgusting. And he's like, we need to dig up the horse, and like, we need to do an autopsy. And then he's telling her she fucked up because she buried the horse. Like, yeah, he's revolting.
Yeah, he's a real shit person and a liar.
Right.
And yeah, and I love that he ends up getting his comeuppance at the end. One of the things that happens is that she ditches him after that, like in the middle of that business meeting, and goes out in the town and drinks and has like a night out. And then he is in a cab on the way home because she's taking the car, and the cabbie realizes that from talking to him, he's a liar and he's broke. So the cabbie says, "Get the fuck out of my cab." And he's in the middle of the countryside and has to walk home miles and miles in the middle of the night, and we see him starting to get home around dawn. So we're like watching him walk around in like as the sun is starting to rise. And when he gets in, he tries to go right back to his usual schemes, and Carrie Coon is like, enough, you're done. Just sit down and fucking eat breakfast with your kids and stop being such an asshole.
Speaking of that, I also love how the cabbie calls him out, because they're having this conversation about his career and his life and everything. And the cabbie says, well, all that matters are our kids. That's all that matters in life. He's like, are you a good dad? And he's like, yeah, I am. He's like, I give them, I pay for them, and I've never hit them. And the guy's like, calm down, buddy. That's like the base level of what you should be doing. And he's like, don't pat yourself on the back for that. And I'm like, thank you. I'm glad somebody's calling out this douche.
Yeah. And he asks him, what do you even want out of life? Because Jude Law's like, he doesn't even know. He doesn't even have an answer to the question.
He's a hot mess.
Yeah.
My favorite kind of
The
mess.
only kind.
I wish I liked this movie more. For me, it was just so slow, and I felt like, although there was some good emotional drama, like plot-wise, this is more of a you movie, Dave. This is more your style of movie than it is mine. Because I felt like it was just kind of plotting for the most part.
I could not disagree with you more. I absolutely loved this. I thought this was fantastic. I think the dialogue's great. The acting is stellar. Yeah, I was absolutely riveted by Carrie Coon's amazingness. So yeah, I loved this.
Fair enough.
Oh, I kind of want to see it now. You spoiler piece me into it.
Yay!
Evan, because you
That's why
didn't
you
like
wanna
it.
see
That's
it.
why I want to see it.
I knew telling you that would make you interested in seeing it. I knew it.
I was like, I didn't even have to say anything. It was
You're
just
right.
that Evan didn't like
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. It's not that he didn't like it.
No,
It's
I'm
that he
kidding.
described it as, a slow movie where nothing happens. And I was like, sold.
No, that's not true. Everything happens.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's often the case in
Yes.
long movies where nothing happens. Everything actually does happen. It's just usually between the character's ears.
Exactly.
So, it makes it hard to, it's hard to put a character's brain on screen. I guess that would be kind of boring.
Yeah. And in an 80s
so.
movie, there's not very much 80s music in it. At least the stuff that's good. There's some.
Try
You get little
like,
Thompson
on.
twins.
80s music. There's some great Heart. We get Heart, These Dreams.
Yes, that was well used. I thought that was an interesting thing, is that in the beginning of the film, he's waking her up in the morning with a nice cup of coffee very gently. And then we see when they get to England, he does it. And then eventually he just doesn't even wake her up anymore. He's such a dick. He just goes straight to work.
He's checked out.
Yeah. I mean, one time he even says, I'm going to work, and he goes to like a football match with his buddy. Like, you asshole. You said you were going to work on a Saturday.
He's such a scammer. He's just a compulsive liar. He's horrible.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
All right. So let's run down the list here. First, Spiral. I would say see it. You can find it on Shudder if you're a Shudder person. Megan, was there anywhere else that you could see it? Is it VOD or?
I think it's just Shudder.
Shudder. Okay. So if you're a Shudder person, definitely watch it. It's really good. And then at some point, you'll be able to catch it elsewhere. Mr. Soul. Where can people see that? Because I would also say see Mr. Soul, and I think you would too.
Absolutely. You can see it's playing at virtual theaters right now. For those in Boston, it's playing at the Brattle virtually. But yes, so it is screening virtually at independent theaters.
Cuties is available on Netflix.
And I would say see it.
Yeah.
I think it's an important film to see. It's an uncomfortable film.
To be part of the conversation. Yeah.
Even not to be part of the conversation. I just think it's an important film to see, period. But yes, in order to be part of the conversation. And yeah, but prepare yourselves. It is a very uncomfortable film to watch.
Not an easy one to watch. So just gird yourself. Steel yourself, whatever you want to say. The way I see it, it sounds like you guys would recommend that.
I would definitely recommend it. Yes.
Yeah, I'd say see that.
And where can people find that?
I believe that's on VOD or will be on VOD.
Got it.
Yep.
And then The Nest is it's not for me. I'm going to say no. Megan, sounds like you would say yes.
I would say a very, very enthusiastic yes.
And that is apparently playing in some theaters in the Boston area. I'm not going to just rattle them off, but I imagine there will probably also be video on demand at some point too.
Yes. I believe it is on video on demand because we are not going to the theaters right now.
Yes. And that is our stance as a show. We are not going to the theaters right now.
Correct.
Not safe. And guess what? Fauci says it's not going to be safe until after a vaccine. So fun. Good times.
We are not in the darkest timeline at all.
No, not at all. I declared this year the most exhausting timeline. It's just, it's so tiring on so many levels.
That's a good way to put it.
But anyway, you know what's not tiring is doing this show. This is a lot of fun. We really enjoy doing it every week.
Yeah, we do.
So first, I want to say a big thank you to our editor, Otto Clamor. Thank you for making us sound so good every week. If you want to find the show, you can get it anywhere you get podcasts, but you can also find us at our website, which is spoilerpiece.com. You can find us on social media. We're Spoiler Piece Theater on Facebook, And we're at Spoiler Piece on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd. And if you want to get in touch with us, you can email us, spoilerpiece@gmail.com, or you can give us a call
at 862-21-PEACE.
Yes, you can leave us a voicemail and, say something. Talk to us about a movie. Just say hi.
God damn it.
We appreciate hearing from you, whether it's email, Instagram message, what have you. We like hearing from you guys. So please reach out, and we're happy to talk. If you like the show, please rate and review us on your podcast platform of choice. Ideally, little love on Apple. I don't think any of us will complain about that.
True.
You can go to ratethispodcast.com/spoilerpiece, and that will pull up different options to go to. And if you really, really like the show, be sure to join our Patreon. This week's exclusive audio was a patron's choice. We talked about Alfred Hitchcock's film Rope, and that was quite a lot of fun. For $5 a month, you can vote in polls and get exclusive audio each week. For $10, you can pick movies for us to see. We also want to say a huge thank you to our patrons.
We do. We want to thank Bill Skahan, Bob Chipman, Chris Wilkinson, Davida Margolin, Deirdre Crimmins, Elisa, Christopher Jensen, Max Colville, Mike, Lord of the Sith, Rory Glynn, Sean Pensionar, Shauna Harris, Shelley M. McCaskill, Shona Glasgow, and Zach Pigeon. Thank you so much, patrons.
Thanks, patrons. You rock. My name is Evan Crean. I am co-chair of the Boston Online Film Critics Association and co-author of your 80s Movie Guide to Better Living. You can follow me on Twitter and on Letterboxd as Real Recon.
My name is Megan Kearns. I'm a contributor to Edge Media Network. I, too, am a member of BAFCA, and you can follow me on Twitter at OpinionSWorld and on Instagram and Letterboxd at The OpinionS.
And my name is Dave Riedel. I sometimes write for Salt Lake City Weekly, and I'm a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association, and you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd as Dave Sees Movies.
We will see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.